I'm going to do sort of 10, 15 minutes on personal information economy, what's driving it, what the conditions for success are, and therefore how you can access this opportunity, which is worth billions. To start the story, what are the drivers? So we heard a lot this morning about data. Data is obviously strategically critical to business. The hundreds of millions of dollars that have been poured into improving how data is captured technically, but also how we go out and acquire businesses that have data that we might want, has only really been matched by the hundreds of millions invested in the analytics that drive it. It brought us things like real-time, next best offer, and programmatic media buying. It's no wonder that data is top of the CEO's agenda right around the world. However, there is, as we all know and we've heard about today, a problem with this picture. And that problem is that the way that data is currently being used is making for a very unhappy consumer. It's not that surprising, because the only time the consumer really hears about their data is when they find out about the FBI or CIA snooping on them, about a 17-year-old hacking it out of their telco, or they're being stalked across the web by a pair of shoes that they didn't want to buy then, and they really never want to buy. They certainly don't want to buy now. This is causing a real rupture, sort of a contradiction right at the heart of it, which is people say they don't want to share data, but clearly we know that they are. And the reason they're sharing their data is because digital services are part of our infrastructure. We need it to get on with our lives. So in any marketplace where we have, on one side, the producers who are trying to make the market work by doing something to the very people that, the consumers that make the market work, if those two sides are seemingly incompatible, it starts to sound a bit like market failure. When you have market failure, you have things like GDPR. So the regulator steps in, and as we all know, you've heard it many times today, it will make a profound impact on how consent is captured and recorded, and the responsibility for businesses to ensure that the data they have is well documented and that the users, customers, can access that data and take it elsewhere or have the right to delete it. And of course, if you get it wrong, there's quite a painful fine waiting for you, 4% of global revenue, or 20 million euros, whichever's bigger, of course. However, consumers aren't going to wait until 2018 because they have to put up with this. And again, we know the stories, ad blocking, 22% of mobile users, over 200 million desktop users. And on top of that, we know that consumers are dirtying their data. They're providing false information when they log into your services. They're providing false information when they're accessing white papers. And if that data is used as if it has a sound provenance, that's going to have an impact on your business because you're making decisions based on poor data. And this can cost businesses up to 12% of revenue. Obviously, the personal information part of it is a small bit of it, but nevertheless, it is a commercially important factor to consider. Ultimately, we're getting to a place where customers are walking away from us if they feel that they don't trust the company. They don't trust the company to protect their privacy. Might want to say, if I was dramatically inclined, to say that we've fallen off a trust cliff. Trust. So, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, said, we've had a digital revolution. Now it's time for a trust revolution. And you've heard trust everywhere today. We talk about it a lot. It's in our logo as well. But trust hasn't always been important. Well, clearly, trust isn't a thing that necessarily gives competitive advantage. It's fundamental to business. It's the oil that greases the commercial wheels at the heart of every single economy. In the old world, trust was really important because me as a brand, you had to trust that I was going to deliver on the promise I made you to make sure those cornflakes were really tasty. Of course, if you broke that trust, and I didn't like the cornflakes, I could just go and buy another product. The damage limitation is limited. However, in information services, when I buy a product from you, I'm giving you a load of information about me, personal information. Where do I live, my age, my credit card details. So if you break the promise, if you fail to deliver against the things you promised you would, I'm then exposed. The exposure to damage, personal damage to me, is far greater than it ever has been before. And this is going to become critically important for the obvious reason, ubiquitous connectivity. We're all talking about it. All these devices, whether it's 20 billion devices connected by 2020, or the fact that 5 quintillion transistors were loaded into non-computing devices last year. The point is, everything is going to be connected to the web in some way. And all of that information is potentially enormously personal. You know, we're going to be connected by our watches, our pets, our dogs, our homes, our thermostats. Those are information assets which are potentially enormously valuable, but also, with that potential of value, could be enormously damaging if misused. And all of that information is currently, or is increasingly, being gathered around the individual. So you're getting to a place, as we move forward over the next couple of years, where the individual will have a data source that is incredibly broad, incredibly deep, accurate, because the individual is using it to make decisions about their own lives. So they're incentivized to ensure that that information is right and potentially permissioned. So suddenly, when you look at this picture, and then you think about what we're doing as businesses today, this feels somewhat two-dimensional. We've got a single view into our customer. If I'm a retailer, I know enormous amounts about how many tomatoes you buy and how often you buy them. But I know nothing about what time you get up in the morning, how you go to work, what other sort of, you know, where do you work, what kind of car do you drive. And if those businesses want to think about creating value propositions where they might join up other parts of your life, the amount of friction to then go out and do commercial deals between company A and company B is really complicated and really expensive. When the alternative could be to just ask. And if you can demonstrate to the customer that you can create value out of their personal data, and you'll do it in a way that protects their privacy, they may well give you access to the richest source of information we have ever seen. And this is where the billion-pound opportunity lies. Personal information management services are based around this exact thing. Trusted, two-way personal information sharing relationships in which the individual allows customers to carry out information-based tasks on their behalf. But why is this so important now? I think intuitively, we all know why. It's because of this. You know, the world is draining our brains. We have temporal, emotional engagement constantly. There is a wealth of information and a poverty of attention. And this is why people are increasingly seeking for services that aren't necessarily giving them more things in their lives, but rather helping them out with information tasks, helping them make better decisions. How do I manage the things in my life? How do I gather it all up so I can see it and use it? How can I use that stuff to make better decisions? Actually, better still, can you carry out some of the tasks I really hate doing so I can do the tasks I really enjoy doing? So for example, don't just sell me a car. Sell me a mobility solution that allows me to move around the city with my family in whatever way is best suited for that moment in time. Banks, don't sell me credit cards. Don't sell me loans. Sell me a solution that sits right over the top that connects all of those parts of my financial life together so I can then save for a much more important event like educating my kids. Energy. You know, don't sell me energy. You know everything you need to know about where I live, how much it costs to heat a house like mine. Why don't you instead provide a service that helps me better manage my home? You know, do I need to change the roof, use solar panels? You know, what kind of an energy provider would lead to a better energy supply moving into, you know, more energy suppliers of a certain type moving into my area? In the US, in Texas, there are energy providers who have now got permission from their customers, and they're paying them every year to allow the energy providers to tap into their homes and turn down their air conditioning, which then allows them to avoid firing up dirty gas-powered fire stations during power surges. Fundamentally different. These markets, these sorts of businesses, are the ones that we've identified as being worth billions. So in the course of the work that we've been lucky enough to be doing this with clients, we've identified hundreds of different customer value opportunities. And Liz mentioned it this morning, but this is a network of gaps, information gaps that exist in people's lives. You know, we go, is it simple and routine? You know, how do I make sure that I've got the right milk? How do I make sure that I don't miss my meeting in the morning so I know automatically when I get out of bed whether or not there's a train strike? All the way up to, you know, how do I, you know, where do I need to move? Where are the best schools in the houses that I can afford? Once you've understood these tasks, you can then start to build out these value propositions that we talk about. And obviously those value propositions at the heart of them have to have the trust. So the trust is the enabler, but the value is always the most critical thing. So there are over 500 businesses that we're tracking in the market that are currently providing these kinds of services. And so we had a look and thought, well, look, wouldn't it be interesting to see what sort of revenue models are emerging? Well, it turns out that the revenue models are, pretty similar to the ones we already know. But the difference is there's a bit of a twist. There's something in it that gives the power back to the individual. The empowerment, the power in the relationship has shifted from the business to the individual. So for example, sales. In the old world, you would pay a broker a commission in order to go and find the cheapest or best or most appropriate energy provider. But the trouble is the incentives are a bit messed up. Because clearly, if there is a bigger incentive to recommend one product over the other, I might not actually recommend you the right one for you. I'll recommend the one that's right for me as the broker. SaverWhat gives the agency, is a permissioned agent in the market that will actively and constantly go out and look for the right energy provider for you based on whatever your specifications are, and then switch automatically whenever it hits a certain price threshold that you're interested in. Data access and management. So businesses, hundreds of millions of pounds to help them manage the vast amounts of data they process, transactional data, insight data, and the like. In the personal information economy, the same thing's happening, but on the side of the individual. So DataQ is gathering information, helping individuals make sense of the information that's being gathered by all the services they use in their lives, and then they're helping them monetize it. Market research, again, another billion-pound industry. In the old world, I profile customers, I send out questionnaires, you send it back, I then use that data, sit on that data, which bear in mind has got a half-life of about 6 months, but I'll still sell it as if it's got totally pucker provenance. Citizen Me, however, gives the tools over to the individual and says, well, use this, connect it to all your social services, answer a series of questions around things that you're interested in so you can find out what you're like versus your neighbors. And now you've got a profile on yourself. Oh, and by the way, we'll also introduce you to businesses that are interested in accessing that data. And then Citizen Me also get a metadata, an anonymized metadata picture of all of those customers. So they've also got another revenue model that sits underneath the first. And then advertising, the controversial one of all. In an ad-blocking world, an ad blocker plus, Brave as a browser invites the user to say, well, what are your preferences? I'll only show you the ads that you're interested in. Oh, and by the way, when you watch them, I'll pay you with a bit of Bitcoin. So these things are emerging. These are revenue models that are familiar, but like I said, they've got a bit of a twist. I started out the presentation by obviously doing the doom and gloom thing, which is the burning platform, and that is a reality, which is saying, unless we recognize that what the individual wants may not be compatible with the trajectory we're currently on, that we need to rethink how we create value. But if we do it in a way that is trusted, it will give us access to a data source that is more valuable than has ever existed before. Then possibly we will have the power to create billions for us and our companies, but at the same time create really empowering, differentiating benefits for consumers.